I know my home is something odd. That's blaming me is blaming God. Could I create myself anew, I would not have imprisoned you. If I could get control of the soul, or grasp the ocean with a sand, I would be measured by the soul. The mind's the standard of the man.
Seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
Народом нашей Родины прославляющий человечеству курс коммунизму. Летчик космонавт Комаров. Коммунизму. Народом нашей Родины прославляющий человечеству курс коммунизму. Летчик космонавт Комаров.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, alles schlaff, einzeln weit, nur das Traut hoch heiligen Palt, hol die Erbe im lockeren Halt, schlaf in himmlischer Peace, schlaf in himmlischer Peace. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, Hirte Ost, Gott gemacht, durch der Engel Halleluja, durch des Laun und redeeming nice, Christ der Retter ist da, Christ der Retter ist da.
I'm going to New York with you. You know, Bucky Harris, the Yanks manager, gave me a job as coach for as long as you're on the team.
Look, Habit, if you're the coach, you must know all the players.
I certainly do.
Well, you know, I never met the guys, so you'll have to tell me their names, and then I'll know who's playing on the team.
Oh, I'll tell you their names, but you know, strange it may seem, they give these ball players nowadays very peculiar names.
You mean funny names?
Strange names, pet names, like Dizzy Dean and...
His brother Daffy?
Daffy Dean.
I'm their French cousin.
French?
Gouffet.
Gouffet Dean, oh, I see. Well, let's see, we have on the bags, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third.
That's what I want to find out.
I say, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know who's on third.
Are you the manager?
Yes.
You're going to be the coach, too?
Yes.
And you know the fellow's name?
Well, I should.
Well, then who's on first?
Yes.
I mean the fellow's name.
Who?
The guy on first.
Who?
The first baseman.
Who?
The guy playing first.
Who is on first?
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yes.
Well, go ahead and tell me.
That's it.
That's who?
Yes.
Look, you got a first baseman.
Certainly.
Who's playing first?
That's right.
When you pay off the first baseman every month, who gets the money?
Every dollar of it.
All I'm trying to find out is the fellow's name on first base.
Who?
The guy that gets the money.
That's it.
Who gets the money on first
He does, every dollar. Sometimes his wife comes down and collects it.
Whose wife?
Yes. What's wrong with that?
Track 1. All glory and praise belongs to God. Exalted and great is He. This encoded message of dots and dashes translates into, "What hath God wrought?" You heard it thrice. And it's the first official telegraph message. See, a grief-stricken Samuel Morse made it possible after losing his wife. Now, losing a loved one is no doubt an immense hardship to bear, but missing the news of losing a loved one? Well, that's just too bad. So bad that it just might have prompted the idea to invent a new way of sending and receiving letters in a way which didn't solely depend on the messenger on a multi-week journey through unforgiving lands on horseback to deliver it. So with help from the scientific community and government funding, Morse delivered the first message via a very, very long cable and utilizing electromagnetic forces. In gratitude, Morse allowed the daughter of a former Yale classmate to choose what would become the first telegraph message. Hence, "What hath God wrought?" The message was sent from the U.S. Capitol to Baltimore, where Alfred Vail, a colleague and friend of Morse, successfully received the message in expedience through a wire. And that is why this track is called The Wire's First Words. Track 2. This was a song of a bird who'll never sing again. The dramatic irony of what you heard is enough to inspire anguish in the heart. Dramatic irony because we know what that little kawaii bird does not. In his frivolous attempt in attracting a mate, none came. Was she away on holiday, out for groceries? Was she sleeping? No, she was rather very dead, non-existent at that point. And it's a shame because there is no one quite like her. Ain't that just the way? In fact, there was no one like him either. He was all there was, singing to no one. He might have expected a partner to fly into his life, have children, see the next generation of his kind, but no, he was rather very alone. Knowing this and hearing his charming tunes, in a desperate attempt to find someone just like him, you might want to hold him and offer him solace through the warmth of your hands. Let him know that he's not alone after all, as you ease him into extinction. But that's not what happened. Alone he was, alone and confused, and ain't that just the way? And that is why this track is called She Won't Be Coming, She's Extinct. Track 3. No one likes to feel alone. Our persistent search for life in the universe proves that. Some claim to come into contact with extraterrestrial life, but with what proof? Certainly without the absolute certainty could we say that we aren't alone after all, but we have no such certainty, no proof. So we search on. In 1967, it would appear, for a spark of a moment, that we may have found it. Jocelyn Bell Burnell noticed something strange. It was a small kind of strange she picked up on a radio telescope, but any amount of strange was huge for discovery. A signal from space? Why, yes, a signal from space. Could it be? Jocelyn wondered. It seemed far-fetched, but she couldn't help but to imagine the possibility. What if? To say that she merely entertained the idea of stumbling upon aliens would be an understatement. She named the signals LGM, after all. LGM standing for Little Green Men. A rapid radio blip that was spaced out exactly 1.3373 seconds from each other. That's something. What you hear now is an audio representation of that created by David Vankstedt, or let me know on YouTube. The signal lent credence to the notion it was more than a natural phenomenon, except that's exactly what it was. It was actually an extraordinary discovery in and of itself, but not to us dreamers. I want to believe, you'd hear them say, and if I could add to the phrase, I want to believe we're not alone. So we search on. And that's why this track is called Mistaken for Little Green Men. Track 4. He was a good lad, Joseph Merrick. A good lad indeed. Human, obviously, but most of us don't act like it. What does it mean to be human besides what our DNA makes us to be? A pure heart? God-fearing? Humble? Kind? Well, this was Joseph. He suffered from severe deformities that only grew worse as he got older. He couldn't do things a normal Englishman could do. He couldn't go places without stares of disgust and shock catapulted in his direction. His speech, too, became impaired, so he could not converse like an Englishman. His tumors only continued to grow, and by the aging day, he was that much more deformed. He'd never settled down and started a family like a normal Englishman, and for all of his 27 years of life, there had only been a handful of people who saw him as he truly was, a human being. What you hear now is an actor's recreation of Joseph's speech, reading a poem by Isaac Watts, which Joseph used to tag on to the end of his letters. The poem read, "'Tis true my form is something odd, but blaming me is blaming God. Could I create myself anew, I would not fail in pleasing you. If I could reach from pole to pole or grasp the ocean with a span, I would be measured by the soul. The mind's the standard of the man." A film made about Joseph Merrick also quoted him as saying, "I am not an elephant. I am not an animal. I am a human being." And that is why this track is called He is a Human Being. Track 5. We all know this day, at least if you're an American, you should be familiar with the Apollo 11 spaceflight. The country watched in anticipation as Saturn V, the rocket housing our brave astronauts, counted down until liftoff. A voyage years in the making, an ethereal accomplishment for humanity, and also politically motivated. Politics. No one can hear the pettiness of politics in space. And regardless, the Cold War got heated with the space race, and the USSR was definitely in this race. And then, the moon happened. Chime away in your local business places or comment section about the validity of this historical happening, but as it stands, the United States of America was and is the only country who landed men on the moon. Little moon men. The Soviets were not so successful, but boy did they try. There's two sides to every story, and the story of space travel is no exception. This West Side Story tells one of glorious triumph, but 2 years prior, in Soviet Russia, a different story. That is why this track is called Two Sides. Track 6. Once again we visit the year 1967. Vladimir Komarov. Dead. Burnt. Killed on impact. Yeah, killed would be more of an appropriate use of diction on my part. Vladimir Komarov. Not just dead. Killed. By what? Whom? And why? Well, the what is simple. He fell from the sky. Who put him in the sky? A little less simple, but basically it was this. The antagonist of Vlad's story was his own government. Now, I don't want to bore you with the cliches and Cold War conflicts. No, because this is a story of friendship, betrayal, and sacrifice, in that order. But for namesake, I suppose you could say that the, quote, bad guy in the story was Soviet president at the time, Leonid Brezhnev. I won't even bother with that pronunciation. So we know what killed Vlad, we know who, but why? Enter Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space and best friend of Vlad. They hunted together, drank together, piloted super-secret Soviet spacecrafts together, typical BFF stuff. As the Soyuz 1 mission approached quickly, it was vaguely reported that over 100 defects had been detected by the time of launch. I say vaguely because, super-secret Soviet things. But one thing both Vlad and Yuri knew was that the mission was doomed from the start. Organized in a rush to commemorate an important date in Soviet Russia. I could research that too, but the lack of mention of the specific date befits my narrative. Vlad was set to pilot the spacecraft alone, and Yuri, his best friend, was only attached to the project as a backup pilot, in case, Vlad decided to back down. And that's the why. Why him? Because if he had stepped down, he knew his friend would perish in his place. It's unclear if the audio heard here is authentic, and it was reportedly picked up by eavesdroppers in Turkey via radio. No one can say for certain what the final transmission could have been because, super secret Soviet things. And those would have been among his final words. And no one disagrees with the fact that a great tragedy occurred in this heavy chapter in the story of space travel. There are two sides to everything, and that is why this track is called Of the Same Coin. Track 7. In the first year of World War I, something unexpected happened. Now, spending Christmas Eve in the midst of trench warfare was enough to diminish the joy of any hardened soldier. They had families who'd been expecting them by then, but still at war. The sun set on the Western Front. Melancholic pawns to soulless empires sat under the stars. Midnight struck. It was Christmas. 1914. The fighting ceased for a while, but this was war. Nighttime was perfect opportunity for an ambush, but like I said, something unexpected happened. So I'll cut right to the jolly chase. Someone started singing. Fun fact, the mother language of the famous Christmas carol Silent Night is actually German. Stille Nacht. But you're a smart cookie, you probably already knew that. But what the dickens, the British must have thought? Some, in English, sing along to the tune of Silent Night, among other songs. Soon enough, slowly and with extreme caution, soldiers from both sides raised from the trenches onto no man's land and lowered their weapons. Allies met face to face with their enemies. Just hours prior, the man standing across from one another was bent on ending his life, but on that night, they were brothers. When teen time came about, they socialized, played football, sang, and gave gifts. Others optimized the truth to bury the dead who were left to rot in no man's land. Others, besides them, took it as an opportunity to tidy up the trenches, as the trenches has become their home for the time being. But all in all, they had peace. No Germans killing British, no British killing Germans. For the most part, at least. And as the 26th of December approached, sporadic gunshots were heard, one by one by one. Soldiers retreated back to their trenches. War resumed. If it were up to the individual, the soul, peace came naturally. To have peace was an obvious choice. To have peace seemed reasonable to ask for. And that is why this track is called Hab Frieden. Track 8. The first album officially dropped in 1857. It doesn't sound like the cute French folk song it's meant to be, I know, but it's a start. Actually, it's the start. Not a sound before that day was ever recorded and played back. The past was completely silent. Where images and ideas could be recorded in way of photography and writing, sound was a come and go. Theodore's album, this album, was made possible by the pioneer of sound recording, the great inventor, not Thomas Edison. Not Thomas Edison was a Frenchman. Now, there isn't much known of him, especially since his breakthrough was overshadowed by the actual Thomas Edison and his phonograph. It's a shame, really, but not uncommon. Not uncommon for great minds to be overlooked and forgotten. His name was Edward Leon Scott. And for what it's worth, I don't think I'll ever be able to forget that haunting voice, and I mean that in an enduring way. I've listened to it far too many times to actually be disturbed by it anymore, And now, to be frank, I quite like the sound of it. Also, what a baller way to preserve your privacy. The very nature of the invention is the proof in the pudding. Who invented the phonograph, really? It sure wasn't Thomas Edison. It was Leon Scott. And he's actually singing a French folk song into a machine in the year 1857. Now, you're hearing it. Now, if that doesn't just boggle your bobber, I don't know what will. But it does sound like gibberish, doesn't it? Well, the actual lyrics are as follows, and please pardon my atrocious French. Au clair de la lune, mon ami frère, prête, and the audio cuts mid-lyric. What are you going to do? Truly, this was the first track, although it wasn't a commercial hit, the signature of an indie artist. And that is why this track is called I'm an 1850s Kid. Track 9. This one's simple. A good joke. I mean, they didn't really tell jokes, I think, Abbott and Castillo. I'm sure you heard it before. Abbott is being made coach of a baseball team. Castillo asks the names of the players. Who's on first? What's on second? I don't know who's on third. Castillo doesn't understand that the names of the players are actually who, what, and I don't know. So he asks Abbott, who's on first base? Abbott says, yes. Brilliant. It's classic. The timing, the performance, the charisma, the unfolding series of events taking place in real time between two gentlemen about a simple misunderstanding in front of an audience, nothing more to it. I've mentioned dramatic irony earlier in the album, but this classic rib tickler uses the same creative rhetoric device to make a fool out of Costello in a fit of frustration. And right when we, as an audience, begin to feel as though the joke has become tedious, the script is flipped. Castillo thinks he gets it, but then in a double misunderstanding, Abbott also gets confused. I'm confused. Everyone's just a little confused, and it is funny as donuts. There's no profanity, no slapstick, or provocative, risque horseplay, just plain and innocent humor. No substance or commentary, just a really good joke. And for some inexplicable reason, as it stands, it may be considered the most iconic comedic performance of all time, and without a shadow of a doubt, is a true classic. That's why this track is called Classic.